Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's edition, Hello 2024, Notes for a New Year. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am Writing for Screens. I am the one who runs this channel. I make up this channel. I am on this channel. I am going to... I'm hoping I'm actually live. Just checking my settings. I come to you here live every Wednesday, if I can make it, at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. Thank God someone's watching. To talk about various issues in writing and screenwriting and filmmaking. But the main heart of this channel is actually on my channel page. This is a screen grab of the channel page. And if you look down at the first three playlists, let me show you a close-up. The first three playlists are called Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process Being a Writer. This is where the good stuff is. This is where the heart of this channel is. It is 50 short videos, each one about 10 minutes long on a particular topic. Flashbacks, dialogue, character, I've got it all. I've worked that down to a little lesson on that topic that I think is full of useful tools and skills and insights. That's where I beg you to go look. They are free. They are available 24/7. You can come back to them. You can stop them in the middle. You can do whatever you want because it's all about how you use what I'm offering for your purposes. There is no right or wrong. There is no one way to do any of this creative stuff, even screenwriting. There are many, many ways, and each writer and screenwriter and filmmaker has to figure out their own way. What works for you? What do you want to do? What kind of work do you want to do? You've got to figure it out. I'm just giving you some tools, some skills that I got in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies on my way out of the business. I'm just leaving this stuff behind for you. So now let's talk about 2024 with some quick Happy New Year's to you all who are here. Hello, Sonia. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year, Nathan and Donna and everyone. Happy New Year. Hello, Anjali. And 2024 gonna be our best writing year yet. Yes. Happy writing year, everyone, from Ricky and to Ricky. And hello, A-Link. Happy New Year. Hand pink waving. Hey. Happy New Year, Helene. And from Germany, yes, many, many good years, good news to all of you in all of the places that you are. Here's what we're going to do today. There's going to be some time for questions and answers, but right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 5 or 6 articles or essays that I read, almost all in the New York Times, and I apologize for that because New York Times is not free to everyone. If you haven't looked at it in a month, they'll let you read 1 or 2 for free. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to summarize these things that I read over the past 2 weeks that triggered me to say, oh, I'd like to talk about that because that brings up a topic that I think is useful. So let's just plunge into those, get through those, and we can talk about whatever you guys want. But let's talk about the new year, notes for the new year. The first article I want to talk about was headlined 2023 Box Office Lessons. Now, I just do not agree with a lot of the lessons that they've got here, but it's a good way to get into the discussion, to talk about the ones that I do think are good and the ones that I think are just nonsense. Their quote was, Hollywood's movies factories run on conventional wisdom, entrenched notions based on experience about what types of films are likely to pop at the global box office. But in 2023, audiences turned many of those so-called rules on their heads. And that's partly true. Their point was things like Barbie broke the rule that films by and for women are not going to be attended by men. Oppenheimer, that films by and for grown-ups or people who wanted thoughtful films would not make money. Super Mario Brothers, that game adaptations couldn't work. And the main one was that superheroes always bring in money because Captain Marvel, Flash, Ant-Man, Shazam, and Blue Beetle all did not do well. That's all true. It's fair. It's cool. But the subtitle really bothered me. The subtitle here is audiences sought comfort and skipped spectacle. And that's just not true. For one thing, they talk about the three of the biggest movies: Barbie, obviously, Oppenheimer, and Taylor Swift's concert film. Those are all spectacles. Those are all gigantic, spectacular. Like Oppenheimer may be set in the real world, but it's set in history, and it's vastly spectacular. Barbie certainly is a spectacle of toys. But it is spectacular. It is a gorgeously production designed and made movie, including musical numbers. Obviously, Taylor Swift's show was a spectacle. So obviously, audiences did not skip spectacles. What they skipped was formula. What they skipped was the predictable same old, same old. And that is really what I think is the important division there. Hello, Gene. Good to see you. Happy New Year to you. In ward number 6. The article then has, and honestly, I wouldn't necessarily go click on this article. I'm just, like I said, using it to bring up these topics. There's a lot of honest bullshit analysis where they're frantically trying to make a trend or figure out what the future brings out of facts. And the facts are real, but the meaning is just not true. One thing they said was people reach for nostalgia in times of stress, and movies that reminded audiences of the past while also managing to feel fresh have been succeeding. And this is certainly true. Barbie, Super Mario Brothers, Little Mermaid, Wonka, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were all in some way escapist, childlike, retro in some way. I mean, you could argue that Oppenheimer is retro in some way. On the other hand, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which is completely retro and nostalgic and comforting, was an enormous flop. So they try and like, oh, well, it's because of this or it's because of that. It's simply just these trends are mainly about whether the movies are good or not, or whether they connect to an invisible zeitgeist thing that we can't figure out. Some things work, some things don't. They were talking about how superheroes may be down, and yet Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse were huge. And the answer to that, by the way, in those cases, I think is both. Those were really good movies. Those were really good movies within that universe, those universes. Anyway, my point is, I believe that the attempt to read the formula and figure out the next thing it's not a great artistic plan. It may be a requirement for owning a business. If you own a studio, you probably do want to think about that stuff, but you also may want to counter program. Who knows? They're also, in this article, there's a big section talking about how franchise sequels and spin-offs need to feel fresh to succeed. And they talked about Lionsgate. Lionsgate is a small studio. They did John Wick Chapter 4 and The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbird and Snakes. And they say those were huge hits because they introduced new storylines in these franchises. That's silly. They all do that. They're all constantly doing stuff. The reason, and they said, they have a quote from Lionsgate executive, each of these movies did something different than the prior. It wasn't just, quote, spend more, make it bigger, make it louder, and cram in more action. That's just not true. What it was that the budgets were smaller. Okay, the budgets for both John Wick and Hunger Games were $100 million, which is a lot of money, but it's nowhere near the budgets of these other movies we're talking about. So when they took in $300 million, that's 3-to-1 profit. That's great. That is a hit. But the reason it was a hit was not because it had new characters. It was because they kept the budget down. And that brings to another issue that's raised in this article, which I think is serious, which is they are saying for the past decade, which is actually not true. It's since the 1990s, or really since the 1920s. Hollywood has kept audiences involved in sequels by making each more what they call bloated, bigger, louder, fancier. And they're saying that strategy is just too expensive. This is true. we have reached, and this is a general business concept that I want to alert you to. I'll talk about this at the end of this little section on this article. I'll talk about my summary of what I think you can take from it to be useful to you. But let's look at Fast X, which actually it's a blast. Jason Momoa is hysterical. The action is hilarious. It's a lot of fun, and it took in $705 million, but it was a flop because it cost estimated $340 million to make. That's just make. That's not even the marketing, which is probably another $100 million. So the point is that movie was so expensive that taking in $700 million is considered a failure. That's the problem. Okay, the seventh Mission Impossible cost roughly $290 million to make. So therefore, its $568 million was a flop. Okay, this is the issue. The issue is the concept of always getting bigger, always getting more, always doing the same thing but more and more and more, of always having this arc of what they call growth is not an artistic reality. It's not an artistic reality for a creator. It's not an artistic reality for a business. It's just not how things work. It's not like you can just sell more burgers and open more stores and then somehow or other your everything will go up in a line like that. It doesn't work that way in the arts. And these businesses are frantically throwing more and more into these things. They are now recognizing that that is actually a bad plan. This actually has happened. It happened in the silent era. It happened in the 1950s. It happens frequently in the Hollywood system because the truth is it's a bad plan. And I do think that maybe, I mean, honestly, they said this in the late 1990s when Titanic was $200 million, and people are always saying it, and then they don't actually pull back because they are afraid to. They're afraid to lose that billion-dollar franchise. Let me do a couple of quick hellos. Hello, Quicke? Godzilla's, yes, the new Godzilla -0, I think it is. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's terrific. Very inexpensive. Yeah, absolutely. It is possible to do a good movie and not spend $200 million. Hello, Burgundy. May 2024 be filled with imagination and tenacity. Burgundy, on point. Well said. I believe that we're hitting a cycle in which Vietnam War stories are now not fresh memories. It's actually past another generation, so that it is evocative of a time which is now out of touch for most people. It's like the 1920s. In the 1970s, the 1920s became big, partly because of Bonnie and Clyde. Ghibli just saved a lot of money for a new movie by not advertising at all for it. Yeah, Ghibli doesn't have to advertise, honestly. And also, I'm not sure how much Ghibli makes compared to some of these other movies. The Boy and the Heron is actually an interesting movie. I liked it a lot. Hello, Adam. Good. Glad that you are doing well. Hi, DG. D something G. Happy New Year to you too. And Tune Up. Have you watched Mutant Mayhem? Yes, absolutely. It's gorgeous visually. It's a great piece of storytelling. It's got a great pace. It's got a lot of humor. The performances are really cool. We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and yes, I thought it was terrific. It had a lot of heart, and they allowed a lot of performance in the voice performance, which it works well. Anyway, let me get back to the box office stuff. They were talking in this article about some of the box office surprises were obviously Taylor Swift and Beyonce's concert film too, but also Sound of Freedom, which is they're calling it a crime drama. It's also a right-wing. It's from what I understand. I have not seen it. I do not want to pay for it. But it's supposedly a somewhat far right-wing social statement, as well as a story about getting back kidnapped kids. Anyway, the point is it made a huge amount of money. That has to do, I believe, with the marketing to a highly motivated group who all communicate, and they set up this program called Pay It Forward, in which people who wanted others to see the movie would buy tickets and say somebody else should take this ticket. It was this complex marketing strategy which used the urge of the community to work as a community. So that's not. I mean, it is useful in a Hollywood analysis sense to say, yes, communities can get together and watch movies, and you should think about that. But it's not really a creative plan at all. Likewise, Taylor Swift cut out the distributors. She'd cut the studios out. She said, I am big enough business that I can just go to the theaters and say, I'm going to distribute my movie myself. And this excited the theater owners a lot, because they said, hey, lots of communities, lots of stars, there's ways to have alternative content in movie theaters. All of these things are very real, and part of the trend I was talking about last time I was analyzing the year. Theater movie-going is going to change. It is going to be spectacles, but it's also going to be more narrowcast. They're going to say, like right now, they're doing things where you can go see a live opera broadcast or a live play or whatever. The thing that I want to talk about here is, for one thing, the question of global business. Because when you talk about doing art, there's no such thing as global art. There's no such thing as a piece of art that appeals to everyone. There probably isn't even a piece of clothing that appeals to everyone if you're in the clothing business, but certainly art is very specific to the culture in which it is made and the culture it is about. And so therefore, this idea of selling your films globally is crucial when you have big multinational corporations that are trying to make $1 billion on a movie. But my message to you is stay out of that. Stay out of that way of thinking. Because for one thing, talking about Aquaman, they point out that Aquaman, which cost over $200 million, had a disastrous $28 million in North America. Overseas, it made $80 million. Still bad for what they spent, but the point is the market outside of North America was 3 times bigger than the North American audience, which means that these corporations have to think, I want this project to sell in all of these different countries and all of these different cultures, and I need to make it appealing to that global market, because that's 3/4 of our money is coming from there. And that has been true for decades. That means that anything that's interesting, it's not, except explosions, is not going to sell. And you need to stay out of that. Yes, it's lovely. It's a great, nice work if you can get it. If you can get in on one of those projects, if you get to be respected as a writer, or you're somebody's brother-in-law and you get in on being one of the 30 people writing one of those big franchise things, great. Take the money, have a great time, do it. But as far as making your art, I urge you to stay out of global thinking. That's my main message here, because my next message is simply, everyone in the business is insane. This business has lost its mind. It's possible that our entire culture has lost its mind, but very least the business has lost its mind, because Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones sequel, cost $295 million to make. $295 million to make a movie. And then they say it took in a disappointing $384 million. Okay, $384 million in income was considered disastrous, a flop. Okay, this is the problem. The problem is now that the machinery in which you make these things has gotten so catastrophically large and complex and impressive. I mean, these movies look amazing, but there is still overhead and corporates. There's 1,000 people working on them, and therefore these movies simply have to make more money than it is reasonable to expect a work of art to make. That's like saying I'm going to do a painting and it has to sell for as much as a Van Gogh would sell, whatever the top selling artwork at the time. That's unreasonable. It's insane. It's stupid. You need to stay out of that. Stay out. The other trend that they were talking about is they said art film has a pulse. That was the line. They're saying that analysts say that streaming has shifted prestige viewing to the home, but sophisticated dramas with modest budgets aimed at older audiences have been showing signs of life. They mention Past Lives, Boy and the Heron, Asteroid City, Poor Things, American Fiction. The truth is, this is true. Movies with somewhat reasonable budgets on topics that are not just explosions and catastrophes are actually finding audiences. Asteroid City made 54 million. What's really interesting is 54 million is a lot of money. I don't know how much it costs. I didn't look it up. But the point is, you should be thinking in terms of making movies that if they made 10 million, a million, you were doing okay. That's my message, okay? My big point about this box office thing is things are changing. The business is changing. It is trying to figure out. The box office is down, and it will continue to go down as the arts spread out into other art forms. And we'll all figure that out as we go along. But good stuff is happening. Good work is being done. The movies this year were, a lot of them, really, really good. Really good. So all I would say is, I reiterate my end of last year message, which is consider how to do your own stuff in a reasonable, inexpensive way to feed into the culture that you can reach, whatever that is. Okay, let me do a couple of quick hellos. Hello, Lucy Milo. Hi. Happy New Year to you too. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've ever seen you here before. Alex, hola. Okay, hang on a second. Adam Lum, do you think the film industry is going the same way as the comic industry in the difficult to make the economics work? The answer is yes. I believe all arts and frankly all businesses are running the same way, which is they are so frantically trying to be the number one global money sucker that they are, as I've said before, not doing the thing. They are not working. They're not sharing their profits with their people. They are not keeping their budgets reasonable. They are not keeping their expenses there. They do not care about the thing they are actually doing. And so therefore, yes, all businesses are currently in this problem. My advice, we can't change this. It is, I'm going to get to this in my next topic about business and technology, but my main thought is, yes, you should be thinking about this for yourselves, saying to yourself, as far as my activism or voting or whatever it is, what can I do to make a statement that this may not, the concentration of wealth, the concentration of power, the concentration of our culture in fewer and fewer extremely wealthy individuals and corporations who monopolize the entire system is not a great thing, in my opinion. However, the main thing you should do is figure out how you can operate in this work, and therefore how you can handle. You're not going to make Fast X. You're not going to make Barbie, most likely. But if you keep making small films, like Greta Gerwig did, you never know. You might actually get that shot. But the main thing is you have to do your small work as you can. Okay. Probably bean counters running the biz. Exactly right. Yes, that is exactly true. Okay, let me check out. Jimmy, last name. Hi, Jimmy. Why not keep movie budgets lower generally? This forces filmmakers to focus on making great. Yes, I agree. The industry has created its own unnecessary budget war. There was a fear in the industry that the global audience, especially because you were talking about crossing many cultural and linguistic barriers, could only respond to very, very primal things. Explosions, lust, but you have to be careful about lust because many cultures and societies that we are trying to sell to are very controlling of sexuality. But the main thing is that they said, what things can transfer from global company to global company all over the world? Superheroes, because they are not any particular culture, tend to do well. They're basically mythic, and therefore they can go global. And that is true. The question would be, do you really need to be global? Excuse me. Does it behoove every arts company to be global at all times, to be competing at that level? My answer would be no. Okay. Is it worth writing animation pilots, feature films if I cannot animate or draw? Yes, if you are willing to then try to find out people who do, if you're willing to do. Let me do some of the questions after. Let me finish up on my stuff, and then I will get to the questions. Hi, John. Nice to see you. And so let me get to you in just a second. Let me finish up with these articles, because there were a bunch of articles on the topic of businesses or business-related items that I thought was interesting. The first was called Wall Street Loves to Guess, but Nobody Knows What the Market Will Do in 2024. Another was an essay about Goodreads. Goodreads is a site, a social media site, essentially, for book reviews and book discussions. And the article was called Let's Rescue Book Lovers from This Online Hellscape. And then there was another article by a guy named Jason Farago. He's a critic talking about AI art. So these three articles I want to lump together in my little note here about business and technology in our time. So let's talk about this briefly. The Wall Street article is simply pointing out, it's a business article about the fact that every year, at the end of the year, strategists and essayists and things write forecasts for the performance of the stock market in 2024. This article points out, despite a track record that is extraordinary in its ineptitude. They did an analysis of the past 20 years of forecasts and found that they were wrong by more than double of the actual performance. In other words, predictions on the stock market or the movie business are literally twice as bad as thinking nothing. The forecasts are simply almost always tremendously wrong. And that's the first point, is that this concept that we can analyze what has happened or what is currently happening and therefore predict the future is wrong. Okay? You do need to look around and try and figure out what's going on in the world, but spending time thinking that if you track data, you can see the future is not correct. Likewise, the article about Goodreads was talking about, here's a quote. Whenever there is a meltdown in publishing, they're talking about a particular case where an author was caught what they call review bombing, which means opening false accounts to leave bad reviews on other authors' books in an attempt to bring them down so that your data would go higher, so your numbers would be higher. The point is that Goodreads has 125 million people signed up to it. It began in 2007 as a place where readers, authors, booksellers, and publishers could connect and share recommendations. But Amazon bought it in 2013, 10 years ago, and it has since become, quote, unmanageable, nearly unnavigable morass of unreliable data and unfettered ill will. The problems are, this review bombing. In other words, people will decide for whatever reason to attack a book and organize an attack on a book or simply sign up in a whole bunch of different personalities and attack a book. Very often, this happens to books that have not yet been published. So these are reviews by people who have not read a book because they have heard from other people on social media that there is something wrong with the book or that there is something bad about it. Obviously, essentially hecklers and stalkers attacking authors, and authors attacking hecklers. Apparently, this is happening too. The point is that, like any social media site, Goodreads is dependent on some form of moderation, some form of rules and behavior enforced, if not by a social pressure, certainly by the company that owns it. And this is, unfortunately, what's happened is Amazon took it over and removed as much of that as possible because there's better clicks, there's better business in attacks and group attacks on things. And essentially, the idea is to make Goodreads more like any other social media site. So therefore, apparently Goodreads uses volunteer librarians to add new books to the site's database in their free time. In other words, they're just saying we'll crowdsource our content, and we'll crowdsource the moderation. We won't have any moderation. So therefore, books get posted when they are announced as a distant prospect by a publisher, before they exist, before they have actually been written sometimes, before they've been edited, before they have been published. And so basically what's happening is the company wants as much engagement, which is very often in terms of attacks and various infighting. People are stimulated to click on things, comment on things, and react to things when they are upset. This is a well-known problem of social media. So the point about this is that our culture, these platforms have become the place in which we have cultures. Our book publishers, this is how book publishers reach their audiences. This is where word of mouth happens, but it is being stimulated to negative reactions by the algorithms running that for the company's profit. And so therefore, what you have is essentially, the companies that own the platforms of culture have become centralized, monopolized. There's only a couple of them. There's only a few places where the big numbers there's only a couple of studios left. There's only a couple of places where reviews happen. There's only a couple of places where people discuss things online. And therefore, those have become so central that you really can't do without it. Publishers cannot not advertise and not be concerned with Goodreads, even though Goodreads is being operated badly for the advantage of the company. Okay, so that's a real problem. I'll get to, at the end of this little rant, I'll get to what we can do about it, what you can do about it to make it practical for you as a creative person. But on that topic, I want to talk about this really cool essay by this guy named Jason Farago. And he wrote an article called AI Can Make Art That Feels Human. Whose fault is that? And his point was, the reason that AI art can feel human is that human art has gotten increasingly mediocre and mechanical. He starts by talking about apparently a TikTok was released with an AI-generated song in the style and voices of Drake and The Weeknd. And everyone panicked and said our species' self-definition was under threat. He wrote, I'm going to read a lot of quotes from this because it's really something. It's great. If you're going to click on any of these, I've got the titles in the description, and it's in the New York Times. New York Times. The article is by a guy named Jason Farago. I have this in the description. AI can make art that feels human. Whose fault is that? I urge you to check it out. Anyway, he writes, whether or not AI is a threat to the species, he wrote, an apter question is, why is the music of these two cocksure Canadians so algorithmic to begin with? I personally don't know or care that much about Drake or The Weeknd's music. What I'm talking about is he's asking the question, what can we learn about human art, human music, human writing, now that the good enough approximations of AI have put their bareness and thinness on full display? I'm reading from this article by Jason Farago. I remain profoundly relaxed about machines passing themselves off as humans. They are terrible at it. Humans acting like machines, that is a much likelier peril, and on one that the culture, as supposed guardian of human virtues and values, has failed to combat these last few years. Collectively, they do signal a hazard we are already facing, the devaluation and trivialization of culture into just one more flavor of data. I'm now going to put a couple of big quotes from this article up on the screen for you. You don't have to, they're teeny type, but if you ever want to pause it and read them, I'll read it out loud to you now. Okay. Every year, our art and entertainment has resigned itself further to recommendation engines and rating structures. Every year, our museums and theaters and studios have further internalized the tech industry's reduction of human consciousness into simple sequences of numbers. A score out of 100 for joy or fear, love, pain, surprise, or rage, all just so much metadata. Insofar as AI threatens culture, it's not in the form of some cheesy Hal meets RoboCop fantasy of out-of-control software and killer lasers. The threat is that we shrink ourselves to the scale of our machine's limited capabilities. The threat is the sanding down of human thought and life to fit into ever more standardized data sets. This is, I believe, an accurate warning and call to all of us. The point is that and it's always been true, creative people, artists, they look towards what's popular and they tend to try and fit it. That's normal. However, the moneyballization of it, the attempt to break down and analyze and strategize the thing that is successful until you can make it into a formula, a mechanical set of numbers or steps that you can follow, which is very much how creative writing, especially screenwriting, is talked about now. When you look at most creative writing and screenwriting talk here on YouTube or in books or anything else, they're trying to break it down into some kind of analyzable formula that you can follow. That is the danger. The danger is not to say, I love this movie by someone, or I love this symphony by someone. I'm going to try and absorb its lessons and figure out how I can do my version of that, the new thing that I'm going to do. They're saying, how can I literally break it down into bits that I can reproduce? That's different. That's not good. So here's the other quote from this article. Rather than worry about whether bots can do what humans do, we would do much better to raise our cultural expectations of humans, to expect and demand that art, even and especially art made with the help of new technologies, testify to the full extent of human powers and human aspirations. I wonder if AI might be the best thing to happen to culture in years. That is, if these perpetual mediocrity machines, these supercharged engines of cliché, end up pressing us to revalue the things humans alone can do. To make something count, you are going to have to do more than just rearrange precedent images and words like any old robot. You are going to have to put your back into it, your back and maybe also your soul. Damn, that's good. Okay, that's good. To make something count, you are going to have to do more than just rearrange precedent images and words like any old robot. You are going to have to put your back into it, your back, and maybe also your soul. That is from Jason Farago in this essay in the New York Times, and I just wanted to share that with you because I think it's really good. Okay. Hi, Darian. Nice to see you. Happy New Year. For me, AI will force, Adam says, will force us to consider more about what we want from art and artists. Yes. Like modernism in the 20th century, it will make us reconsider ideas. Yes. And thank you, Alec. Yeah, exactly. I just really think that this is worth talking about. Here's the deal. We are currently in a culture, in a society in which the mentality of efficiency, of data, of analysis to make things more like the money ball. And interestingly, there was a radio report on American NPR, National Public Radio, about the changes in the rules of baseball. The reason I'm talking about it, they've changed the rules of baseball this year because it was getting boring. The games were getting longer and slower, and this person who was being interviewed said he had, as he understood it, a lot of this came from what is called Moneyball, which is, by the way, a terrific movie about a baseball coach who tries to use data to analyze how to hire people for his baseball team. It's a great movie, but it's kind of misleading because, according to this writer at least, the point about data analysis in sports is that, yes, you will eventually get higher scores. You will get more home runs. This apparently does work. The problem is the game became more and more slow and boring, to the point that they had to change the rules to fight this. So that's my point. My point here is that there is no doubt that technology and data analysis are valuable. But what's happening here is we've got a society in which everyone is so hungry for the opportunity. If everyone has a chance to win, we all might get that company or that app or write that script that is going to put us into the top 1%. And as long as everyone has that chance to win, they'll keep playing. Basically, it is Las Vegas. It is a casino in which the odds are actually stacked against any individual. However, the chance that you could win is making you live according to this set of principles. As an artist, I beg you to become conscious of this, okay? That's where I want to get to something useful to you. Here's the deal. Obviously, I personally think we should all question an unregulated society in which whoever has the most money gets to do whatever the hell they want. And if you don't have a lot of money, that means that there's something wrong with you and that you shouldn't be taken care of. I think that's bad. I vote against that. But aside from voting, I would say keep an eye on your own mind. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. How much we absorb these lessons from our society. And it's really easy to fall into it, to believe that the number one box office is the best art. It's not. It may be, or it may not be. They're actually unrelated, okay? The things that get to be the number one work of art from a financial or data situation is being guided by many, many things other than what you consider quality. And each artist has to decide on a daily basis with every artistic choice you make. You have to decide what's good, what's worth it, what's meaningful, what's cool. You've got to decide that. And if you're doing that based on what the numbers say, you're not going to do good art. And that was what that essay was trying to say. So I'm just saying, keep an eye on your own mind, because it's so easy, especially when every single executive and agent and producer and writing teacher is telling you that that is true. But it's really important for you to have a strong sense of yourself in this culture. None of us is going to change the culture individually. None of us is going to change the world, most likely. But you can have a stronger sense of yourself, of what you think is good, of what you are willing to do. And if you keep your budget low, if you keep your survival strong, if you figure out how to pay your rent and still do your work, you can put something out there and make it, and maybe even make a little money off of it. And then you never know. Maybe something will hit and you'll get more likes and more viral, and that's cool. But that's not what artists do. What artists do is they say, what do I think is good? Genuinely, what you love, do that. Okay, very quickly going to just do some comments here. Awesome quotes, thank you. Yes, back to bring back soul, original thought, thinking and being and doing, rather than the homogenizing ourselves to fit in. Be yourselves and be. Listen to Donna. She is on the right track, in my opinion. Okay, this is just my opinion, by the way. That's all you get here. You are very, very welcome, Lucy. The thing is that unless AI unexpectedly plateaus, it will always be capable of assimilating whatever new form of expression we come up with and inevitably improvise upon it. That's the question. I'm not sure if it will improvise. They haven't yet shown any particular improvisational gift in AI. Without prompts and without steering, AI is relatively random from what I understand. And Happy New Year to you. And yes, don't forget to hit the like button. I actually appreciate it. It's nice to see those likes, and the algorithm, it's good for my algorithm, which means I'll get to do more of this. You also won't feel proud about your art. This is true. And I can tell you from personal experience, it is a weird experience to have fought so freaking hard to make my way in the business, to accomplish the small things that I did manage to accomplish, and to now look back on that and say, in a personal way, that was a magnificent accomplishment. Was it the best art I could do? No. It was the best art I could do in that collaboration for that company. And I'm glad, but the question is, if it hadn't paid, would I have done it? If it had not paid my rent the way this particular job happened to do for me in this particular time period, would I have done it? Would it have been worth it? I don't think so. That's why I am trying to get. For instance, it's a bit of a struggle to live what you preach. Thank you, I know. When you don't live the fast and money-based life, you are labeled as lazy. Well, you know what? It is hard because first of all, we all want the things that big money can buy. We also do get judged. In other words, if we live a relatively simple life, or if we do art that is relatively unpopular, we are judged. That is unfortunately the lot of a creative person, or honestly any human being who's just trying to get by. We've got this weird society right now where a very small subset of people are being rewarded inappropriately. And that has created a new form of aristocracy, a new form of gods, okay? And we are idealizing them incorrectly. And it would be better, I think, to at least try to, within our own lives, remember to respect people not based on that, and to respect ourselves. Yes, it is hard, especially if your family or your group or your society or your work or whatever it is that you're in, they're saying to you, oh, if you are not working 24/7 at making more money, you're lazy or bad. That is hard. But on the other hand, it's hard to be an artist. And I personally believe that it would be worthwhile to at least think about. Keep it in your mind. In your spare time, adding it. Yeah. There's a fair amount of. I don't know all the statistics on universal basic income. I'm not going to get too political. I'm not going to get too economic or social on this. I'm just saying that as I really am thinking culturally, I'm really trying to stay into the sphere of culture. And what I consider at this moment, we have sort of a culture, or I believe it is actually a religion of financial success. And that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So, and I will... Okay, Killian says, I got 6 chapters into a novel that I had created to fit a certain mold I found was popular on BookTube, TikTok, or YouTube. And I almost didn't think about whether or not I like it until I started rereading. Yeah, me too, pal. I know what that is like. It is very, very easy to fall into this. So that's my main message here with all this stuff. I want to talk about one more thing because it sort of leads into this. I would say 2 things. There's an article by I don't have the headline for this one. The article was by Jesse Green, the New York Times theater critic. For some reason, I didn't grab the headline of this one. But basically, the headline, it's in the description. For a Times critic on a deadline, a dramatic reversal. I'm going to just summarize this very quickly for you. Jesse Green is a really good writer, really good critic. I don't actually go to the theater, and certainly not in New York, which is 3,000 miles away, but he just writes good stuff, like in his reviews. He was talking about being assigned to review a play. There was a play going to debut on Broadway, which is a very important big deal for the play and for the playwright, their first Broadway production in New York theater. It's a big deal. This guy is the chief critic for the Times, which is the chief review that matters to the Broadway people. The problem is that this critic had seen this play in an earlier version about 10 years ago off Broadway and hated it. Just hated it. And he wrote a slam review, a pan, which actually 10 years later, having seen more plays by this playwright, Jesse Green, the critic, had said, he said, I'd learned reviewing other plays by the author that he is too good when good to write off when not. And I think that's a very valuable thing to think about. We're all uneven. We all have hits and misses. We all do sometimes a good thing and sometimes not good thing. The question, what he's saying is, if you respect the artist overall, you say, look, when they're good, they're really good. So if they're off, I'm not going to slam them and say they're worthless. They're not. They've done something which either are, just not working. Was his output, I wondered, so variable, or was I missing something? The critic considers asking the editor to put somebody else on because he knows he hates this play. But he says, it's my job to grapple with plays, whether I like them or not. Said, I would go so far as to say that my up and down judgment is the least important part of my reviews, since readers will inevitably disagree with me, bringing their own taste, history, and intelligence to bear. That's as it should be. If formal criticism has any value today in a world of easily shareable opinions, it's in offering a more or less steady backboard for readers to bounce their own thoughts against. Anyway, the point about all this is decides to go to this Broadway play to review it and loves it. The play that he hated 10 years before, he absolutely loves this time. And he's on his way home trying to figure out why. Different production, there were changes in the script, but he said, that's not it. He said, abandoning the pretense of critical inerrancy, perfection, being always right, I concluded that the real alteration was not in the play, but in me. In other words, times have changed. 2014 to 2023, the world has changed a lot. And this socially conscious playwright had written a play that was both wildly funny and very monstrous. And in 2014, that pissed off the critic. Now, in the world that we're in, he's like, that's not inappropriate to our world. The point about this is, our relationship to art is constantly changing, and that is a good thing. So you need to be open-minded about what art is, what art you're going to like, what art the world is going to like. You need to recognize that this is always changing, that we are constantly changing. Artists are constantly changing. You can look at the same piece of art at different times and you will see it differently because you have changed and the world has changed. The point about this, and this is really, really important, don't get locked into a formula. Don't think that anyone has art solved, okay? That's my biggest message. It's an ongoing creative process, and you want to be creative in it with it. So, on that note, I'm going to talk about my last item here, which is the Tolkien estate wins a court order to destroy a fan's Lord of the Rings sequel. Yes, this is a true story. Okay, here's the deal. And this is actually sad for a couple of reasons. Clearly, this author was a troubled person from what I can tell from this story. Don't know him, don't know anything about it. But in 2017, this person, author named, probably self-named Demetrius Polychron, self-published a sequel to Lord of the Rings trilogy. Published a physical book, published it online, went through Amazon, published it, as you can do. Hand-delivered a gift-wrapped copy to Simon Tolkien, the grandson of J.R.R., who's now running the estate. Accompanying the gift was a letter in which Polychron said he, quote, didn't have a choice. Court documents also said that Polychron had conceived of an entire 7-book series, The War of the Rings. Okay, so far, troubling, but in April of 2023, Polychron sued the Tolkien estate and Amazon, claiming that the Amazon series, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, infringed on his copyright of his book and asked for $250 million. All right. This is just bad judgment in every step of this. The judge wrote that the lawsuit was frivolous and ordered him, or the author, to pay the Tolkien estate and Amazon $134,000 in lawyer's fees, plus had the book destroyed. All copies of the book had to be destroyed. All of this person's work destroyed, removed from online. The point of this is, on a minor note, fan fiction is a completely fine thing to do, but you cannot sell it or own it, and it is important that you recognize that difference, that you recognize, first of all, that somebody else's creation is their creation. And if you want to be creative, you need to make your own things. I love the idea of fan fiction. I love that people do it as long as they recognize what it is. It is essentially a creative hobby. You cannot sell fan fiction. Okay? The other important point to get here, though, that you should remember, you can do this. You can make and distribute your own book. Don't steal someone else's creative material, but you could write a book and publish it and get it out there. And that's actually the important lesson here. The other lesson is the importance of recognizing the difference between art and the art business, about being a creative person and being a creative professional. There is a very, very important difference that once again, in this business mindset, no one seems to be talking about. It is absolutely great to be creative. You don't have to be a creative professional. You don't have to make money. You don't have to get famous to be creative. The most important thing here is I sort of tried to turn this into my own version, my creative version of the Serenity prayer. All right? God, or whatever power you want, grant me the wisdom to know what art is, a sprawling, complex, changing thing, and to know I can do it, and the honesty to respect what professional artists do, and to know that it is very, very hard and requires serious sacrifices and is outside of our control, and the courage to do and love what I can do as who I am with what I have right now. That is my message to you all to begin the year. I really think it's important. I do not want to in any way discourage anyone from either being creative without making a profession or trying to be in the profession. They're both good. The importance is to recognize the difference, to know the difference, the wisdom to see the difference between the art business and art. You can do art. No one can stop you. No one should stop you. You should not stop yourself. The professional thing is a different thing, and you need to respect that. They're both good. Figure out for yourself what's worth what and what you can and can't do, and keep changing and exploring it. That is my message to you all. I will put that little Serenity prayer in the description at the end of this. I'm going to quickly try and answer a couple of the questions that were asked. Okay. I'm curious if you've been recognized in real life for your channel. One day I was at a bookstore in Culver City. Somebody was coming out of the bookstore. I was sitting at a table outside, and they said, "Glenn?" And I was like, yeah. Anyway, and I knew them because of the comments. It was somebody I knew. So yeah, once. And that's about all I want, actually. I'm not really into that idea. When I read Save the Cat, 15-beat structure, it feels too much like formula to me, too robotic. Am I being too harsh? No, you are not. Any formula is a plan. It's a plan. It's fine. It's a fine thing to do. It is not the plan. Just like if you were to take Bleak House, novel by Charles Dickens, really great novel, really big. It's divided into two forms. There's a third-person narration and a first-person narration. You could, in theory, analyze that and do your own version. But that doesn't mean everybody should do that or that every book should be like that. The point about all of this is you gotta take these rules for what they are. I did a video about this, so I'm going to point it out. Screenwriting rules. Please look at that. I will put the link to it in the description at the end of this broadcast. So yeah, my answer is any formula is useful in its own form, but it is not the solution to art. If people would stop selling their formulae as the solution to art, I would embrace them wholeheartedly. Hi, something else is here. So glad that you're here. Happy New Year. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am really glad. When are you doing another update in your book? Within the next 2 weeks. And I haven't decided if it's next week or the week after, but I will do because I've been working on it. It was a good holiday for that. Also, with what you say about writing small movies like Greta Gerwig, does that include short films? Yes, absolutely. No, I'm just saying, Quiki, please tell me if I'm getting your name wrong. I hate that I get people's names wrong. The question is, when I advocate for doing small films, do I mean small commercial films or small features? No, I mean, whatever you want to do, whatever you can do, it's all good. My point is, any artist who works in a form which they don't have the power or permission or ability to complete the artwork, like if you want to do a mural, but you don't have a wall, then do your mural on a canvas that you can do it on. If you can get permission to do it on a wall, cool. If you can get the financial support to do it on a wall, great. Do your mural that way. If you want to build a cathedral and you don't have the resources to build a cathedral, build the thing that you can build that will enable your vision of a cathedral to come through. Maybe it's a model, maybe it's a AI animation. I don't know. Whatever it is, my point is always do what you can as who you are with what you have right now. That ongoing, if you have $200 million, if you have $2 million, if you have $2, doesn't matter. What matters is that you take what you can do and do it. Okay, We're going to be signing off soon. Tolkien's story shows how little folks understand IP law. Yes, and it is there. And yes, the point of all this is I'm not coming down on fan fiction. I like fan fiction. I think it's a great thing to do. I think if I was growing up now, I would be doing fan fiction all the time. When I was a kid, I desperately wanted to do James Bond and Sherlock Holmes and Harriet the Spy fan fiction. I would have done it if it was a thing. The important thing is to recognize that when you decide to join in the franchise, you are not respecting the art business. You are not respecting the ownership. You're not respecting the money. All of that. An interesting example of this actually is Zack Snyder, big director, just did a movie called Rebel Moon on Netflix. It's got some fun bits in it. It's not great, but I mean, in my opinion, but the main thing about it is what happened was he wrote it as essentially Star Wars fan fiction. He was like, I've got this idea for a Star Wars freestanding separate trilogy kind of thing. And he wrote it and he took it to the Star Wars company, to Lucasfilm. And they said, no, we don't want you to do that. We don't like it. And he was like, but I like it. I did it. It's cool. I want to do it. So he simply changed all the names and then sold it to Netflix, and now they made it, and it's fun as fan fiction for Star Wars. It's fine, but what's interesting is that even at that level, you find this happening. It's normal. It's a normal creative impulse. Work on it in yourself to say, what is it about this thing that I love that I would make my own version of? And if you can't think of anything that's outside of fan fiction, that's cool. Just recognize that you will not be creating your own independent work. That's it. Do fan fiction. Don't stop. Thank you. Don't forget to feed the algorithm. Yes, please do. That's cool. Okay. Kweku Gana. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, yay, we're starting off with a bang. Okay, and so we're going to end. We're going to end on a high note of praise. I love that. See you next week. Either it will be, probably will be just an Ask Me Anything because I didn't really answer any questions much. And then the week after that, I'll do a novel report. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy. Okay, see you all later. Like I said, if you want the links to the stories I talked about, they're in there. Mainly the Jason Farrago. That's the one I would recommend. If you're going to use your one click, use it on that. Okay, let me just click on it. Go write something.